Thank you for tuning in to Living in Delco and the Brandywine Valley. I'm your host, Shannon.diiorio, and today I'm talking about tips for renters. So if you've been tuning in, my last video, I talked about some of the pros and cons to renting versus buying, and we determined that in some cases, it might be best for you to rent. So today we're going to talk about different tips for renters as far as knowing your rights as a tenant, understanding your lease, and even some tips to personalize your space without causing any permanent damage. First, I'll be going over knowing your rights as a tenant. So you want to understand your rights in your specific state. So here in Pennsylvania, we have the Pennsylvania Landlord-Tenant Act, which has a lot of laws and regulations surrounding how much money a landlord can hold as a security deposit. So in Pennsylvania, just as an example, they can hold up to 2 months rent for the first year of your lease. So if they're requiring first month's rent, last month's rent, and security deposit, it was determined that that last month's rent actually counts as part of a security deposit. So that is the most that they can collect for the first year. And then for the second year, they would have to actually refund one of those months because they can only hold up to 1 month security deposit for year 2. So it's really important that you understand those types of rights because not every landlord may be aware of them or may be following them. So it helps to know your rights. Another thing to be aware of is that some municipalities, so it could be the city, it could be the township that you're going to be moving to, they may require that the landlord conduct an inspection. So the city or town may send an inspector in and they may look for certain things like smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors and not having any broken windows, things like that. So that may be a requirement in the municipality that you live within. So that's something you want to be aware of as well, because that pertains to your rights as a tenant, right? To be aware of those required inspections and to make sure that your landlord followed through with having that inspection done. Something else to be aware of is if you're going to be renting a property that's located within an HOA, that's a homeowners association, or a condo association, that you as the tenant should be given a copy of those rules and regulations, because obviously you're going to need to follow those, so you need to have an understanding as to what those rules actually are. Now, when it comes to pets, some landlords allow pets and some landlords don't. The ones that do allow pets, they may require an additional pet deposit, they may require an additional monthly pet fee, but something to be aware of is that if you have a legitimate and documented need for a support animal, whether that's emotional support animal or some other medical reason for a support animal, landlords cannot, and this is a national law, they can't turn down the support animal. Right? So as long as you're following the proper procedure and getting the proper documentation, that support animal has to be allowed. And not only does it have to be allowed, but they can't charge any additional fees for that or any additional deposits. So that support animal is actually considered to be an extension of you as the tenant. So you want to just be aware of what your rights are with that, if that does pertain to you. Make sure you're checking with your state and local laws as well to see if there's anything that's any different, and checking with the landlord itself to make sure that you're following all of the rules surrounding that, because you still may be required to clean up after your pet and repair any damage. If the support animal causes any damage, you're still going to need to follow certain rules, but you just want to make sure that you understand what your rights are. The next thing that I'll go over is understanding your lease. So every state has their own standard lease that's typically used. However, each and every landlord may have their own lease that they use. And as long as they're following state laws and procedures and including any type of mandated language in that lease, they can have their own lease. But some of the things that you want to look out for. So obviously you want to read your lease and read all of the fine print to make sure you have a thorough understanding, and ask questions if you need to. Work with a real estate agent to represent you. A lot of people don't realize that that's an option, but it is important to have representation so that they can help you understand your rights and understand your lease. But as you're looking through that lease, some of the things that you want to look out for in particular would be when is your rent due, right? Is there a late fee? How much is that late fee? What type of payments will the landlord accept? Is it check only, or will they accept auto deposits? You need to make sure that you have an understanding of how they will accept the rental payments. You want to find out what happens if another tenant in the building is creating a disturbance, like a noise disturbance or something like that. So find out how you're going to file complaints. Find out what utilities you're responsible for. Are you responsible for any of the maintenance? So you want to make sure that you have a thorough understanding of all of that. And again, if there's any HOA rules and regulations, make sure that those are attached to the lease. If you're going to be living with a roommate, you want to make sure that you're taking into consideration whether the lease is only going to be in your name, or is it going to be in both names, or does the landlord have any requirements? Some landlords might require that everyone over 18 be listed on the lease, and others may not have that type of requirement. So you need to figure out what is best for you, because if you're going to be financially responsible for the other half of the rent, that's something that you need to be aware of. And the last thing we'll talk about is easy, inexpensive, and temporary ways to personalize your apartment space. So obviously you want to check your lease, check with your landlord, see what they'll allow you to do. But there are some great adhesives you can get when it comes to floor tiles and backsplash that look pretty real. And it's all in the application. If you take your time and apply it correctly, they look real, and a lot of them will peel off without leaving any damage. You can also get area rugs. There's even a laminate countertop adhesive that you can get that looks pretty real. If you want to change the color or just neutralize the countertops or personalize them, that is easy to remove. If the landlord is going to allow you to paint, a lot of times they want you to bring it back to the way it was before you leave. So an easier way to do that is to just use an accent wall. Instead of painting an entire room or painting your entire apartment, just paint an accent wall, and then that's less that you have to bring back to the original state when you leave. So there's tons of things that you can do to personalize the space without doing anything permanent or causing any damage or risking your security deposit. So that's what you really want to be careful of, because you want to get that money back so you can use it for down payment on a house when the time is right. If you are looking to rent a property or purchase a property in Delaware County or the Brandywine Valley area, feel free to reach out. I love assisting buyers, tenants, and sellers alike. My contact information is in the description below. I hope to hear from you. Thanks.